Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started now. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to our webinar, Unified Clinical Communications, How to Stop Applying Band-Aids and Start Deploying Solutions. My name is Alex, and I will be moderating today's session. This event is brought to you by PatientSafe Solutions. We would love to hear from you and include your voice in the conversation today, so please do ask questions, share comments, or challenge any of our ideas, and please use the question and answer panel on the right side of your screen to input at any time throughout the webinar. All questions and comments will be addressed at the end of today's session. At this point, I'm happy to introduce our featured speakers. Steve Baum is the Vice President of Products. He has more than 15 years of product management experience in healthcare IT, medical devices, and connectivity. Ms. Grace Claus, the Director of Product Management, Clinical Communications. She spearheaded the design and development of our clinical communications platform. Together, they're excited to share with you today, and I will introduce Steve now to kick things off.
Good morning and welcome everyone to our webinar today. This is Steve Baum, the Vice President of Products at PatientSafe Solutions. Our mission here at PatientSafe is really to align with the hospital's mission. We're focused on delivering high quality and efficient patient-centered care, and that philosophy carries through what we do and who we are, as you can see from our corporate name down to the mission statement and what you'll hear about today. We support clinical practice communications and safe workflows that complies with hospital policies and best practice to really achieve improving the patient satisfaction, enhancing the quality of care, and improving financial performance for your facility. We're located in San Diego. We've managed over 200 million orders and workflows completed to date, providing safety nets and efficiency for over 2.5 million patients and 11,000 clinical users, over 8,000 devices in the field at 80 hospitals. Today, acute care hospitals and health systems are looking for us to provide solutions. You may be replacing legacy communication solutions. You may look at responding to quality improvement demands and are looking for a partner there, or moving to a smartphone-based application. We're seeing a few major trends in the market that I want to highlight today. Healthcare workers are typically looking for a next-generation communication system in their hospital. And there are three typical conversations and themes we hear about. One is replacing legacy technologies and devices. Those may be your feature phones, your pagers, carts, laptop computers, or barcode scanners. Another theme we hear about is moving to a smart device platform to enhance collaboration and improve productivity and quality of care. Typically, we see this conversation centered around the Apple iOS device or an Android device, for example. And then thirdly, preventing the SMS texting security concerns, protecting EPHI, providing audit trails for protected health information, improving your compliance to the HIPAA regulations, and also enhancing data security. And those themes are typically what we are hearing from our customers today, and we'd like to focus on a few of those as well. Fundamental issues and barriers that people are facing today can be defined here as single function technology and duplicative documentation. This is really creating issues for the nurses in that they have inefficient workflows, and also across the nursing departments and the other departments there's duplicative workflows and tasks and information silos that are preventing communications and efficient workflows to occur. Some of these needs involve replacing disparate and single-function technology, eliminating non-efficient workflows and double or delayed documentation, and removing those silos so that multiple disciplinary and departmental care providers can work more efficiently. Today, we're going to explore how to move away from implementing Band-Aids and start designing solutions that are intuitive to the clinical workflow. We wanted to focus a little bit on this verb, unified, first, and explore the definition a bit. It's often associated with technology and telephony systems, but I see it as a bit bigger than that. The notion of unifying technology and bringing that to life. It's really around connecting people. That's a bigger part of this. But as you look at this definition, it really talks about shared goals at the heart of it. When people or groups are all on the same page, working for the same shared goals and operating as a unit. And I think that's really the heart of what we mean by unifying. And I'd like to explore a little bit around categories of goals. Overarching, the corporate goals that we often hear around are improving quality, performance, and patient experience. And that will trickle down to departmental and functional goals of eliminating harm, reducing costs, and improving patient satisfaction. And then the next layer down is really around improving care delivery process and compliance goals often, which are really enabled by technology in many cases that help care providers provide better patient-centered care and efficient therapy and services. So we'd like to explore this with you today in the sense of how do you become unified in your thinking about getting to a same common shared goal. Some of the questions will include how do you work with stakeholders to understand their needs and challenges? Because those goals will trickle back up and you can test that against those needs. Are the solutions we're identifying, solving, and applying to the same goals? Are we understanding the pain points of the workers who will be utilizing the technology? What are the shared objectives of the organization? And what are the results in designing a solution as a cohesive unit and technologies that offer collaboration? So with that, I'm going to pass this off to Grace Hua, our Director of Product Management for Clinical Communications. She's going to elaborate on these themes a bit more and help you on the journey to becoming unified in terms of your thinking of the goals and the technologies that can satisfy them.
Thank you, Steve. I'm Grace Hua, and I've had the honor and privilege to work with our team at PatientSafe Solutions to really look at how to innovate a new approach to clinical communications. And as part of this process, I've become extremely passionate about our product. But like Steve said, today I'm not really here to sell a product. I'm not here to sell features. What I'm really trying to do is introduce an idea and a concept of a different way to designing and thinking about designing solutions for your healthcare environment. So what are the right questions that you should be asking yourselves? What are the right questions to ask your vendors, your internal stakeholders, so that you have a unified approach to designing a unified solution? So we've worked with multiple hospitals across the US and even internationally to really understand how they approach thinking about clinical communications and designing a solution to meet their needs. And what we found is that this new approach in identifying the right solution for you really falls into 4 different categories. The first is identifying all of the shared goals, all the shared needs, whether they're technology or organizational, across your hospital. And the second is to identify the clinical outcomes that your organization wants to be able to meet or impact. The third, of course, I see a lot of IT audience on this webinar, is the technical feasibility. So how would this solution actually fit in the already invested technical environment that we have in the hospital today? And the last is gathering real end user feedback. And I'll get into a little bit of how to differentiate real end user feedback from not. And that really helps you provide an insight into how your users will be using the product and how to structure and design that process of a pilot or a trial period to get to the right solution. Throughout this process, I'll also be asking some questions of the group that's on the webinar today, just so that I can get a better sense of what kind of demographics are on the line, what you're really looking for your organization, and that will help me better structure my presentation to fit your needs. So let's start with the first piece, identifying shared goals across the organization. Within the hospitals, obviously, we have the overarching goals of improving safety, improving satisfaction, improving efficiency of care, but ultimately the general theme is how do we deliver care better? And communications really plays into this, factors into this picture, as our CNO groups are trying to improve patient satisfaction, trying to enhance the quality of care, trying to reduce readmission rate, and our CIO groups are trying to improve care coordination, or even down to reducing the device overhead management. And of course, our CNIO groups and others are always trying to get more data and turn that into information and knowledge. So across the organization, while we have these overarching safety, satisfaction, efficiency goals, there are very concrete goals and metrics that our CNOs, CIOs, and CNIOs and others are tracking against. So at this point, what I'd like to do is ask for 45 seconds, 60 seconds of your time, and get some feedback from you with a very simple polling question around what are your shared goals in your organization. So Alex will launch that polling question now. Awesome. Thanks for your feedback. Pretty universal across the board, focusing on patient satisfaction, quality metrics, and data integration. So that's great. So I'll speak to those specifics a little more as I go along the presentation. With those goals in mind, there are also very concrete technology needs in the organization as well. And that can range to be different across different stakeholders. So whether you're looking for a technology solution for your RNs or your MDs or your case managers, they might have different technology needs depending on the type of user that they are. So give me 1 second as I navigate back to my presentation deck. So as I was saying, depending on the type of clinician, there may be different variances in technology needs. So while across the board, your clinicians might be asking for a more efficient way to provide voice calling functionality, a more secure way to exchange text messages, and an easier way to look up contacts and directory information, and a more efficient way to have visibility into care team assignment, there might also be very specific needs around the RN team wanting to have alert management and device consolidation versus the physician team who may want to be able to have more efficient call routing depending on the shift that they're on. So with these technology needs in mind, what we want to be able to do is work with the hospital to really identify and prioritize the top needs across both the technology needs as well as the organizational goals. So at this point, it would be really awesome to get your feedback as to what kinds of technology needs your organization has, and that would also allow me to better structure the rest of this presentation for you. It's okay to check all the boxes, by the way. Okay, awesome. So let's take a look. Looks like secure texting is definitely in the lead with 94% response rate on that. So I'll focus on that a little bit in the presentation. So once you've actually identified the organizational needs and the user needs around the technology that you'd want to be able to deploy, Now let's take a look at what kinds of outcomes you would want to make sure that you speak to and impact once you have that solution in mind. So this comes to the second bucket of what we typically look for. What are the actual clinical workflows that you're trying to impact on the nursing floor or with physicians and providers and around patient care? What I'd like to do is walk through 3 of the workflows that we currently impact in our deployments today. And of course, your organization may have a multitude of other workflows, but the key here is being able to identify what the workflow bottleneck is today and then specify what will be the impact of the technology that you put into place. So the first example that I wanted to talk about is this concept of routing patient waveform alerts. And this is something that we noted at one of our existing deployments, where telemetry alerts were having to be routed to the team nurses and wanting to be able to consolidate those alerts onto one platform. What we have today in a lot of hospitals is the telemetry alert gets kicked off. It's assigned on per shift, every single shift, to the right nurse to bed to patient. It will route to notify the nurse, and the nurse will have to walk back to the nursing station and look at the alert and then address the alert with the patient. With the right technology, what we'd want to be able to do is integrate for the appropriate data, route that alert to the mobile application, and have the ability to have the nurse or the responsible clinician to quickly navigate to see this information and make decisions on the mobile application itself and respond accordingly. So what you have here is the elimination of having to walk back and forth between patient room and nursing station because you have the information at your fingertips. The second example that I wanted to talk about is the concept of triaging orders. And this one is specifically around the stat lab orders. So high priority, must address now. And for those types of orders, a lot of times we see it come through some sort of order queue. The phlebotomist would check the order queue from time to time based on what their workflow is and whether or not they've already completed a previous draw. And if multiple phlebotomists accept that order, then you sometimes end up with 5 to 6 phlebotomists in the same room trying to make the draw and collect the specimen from the patient. What we want to be able to impact with technology is to be able to route that information, that stat order, to the mobile application itself. And with more elegant way to recruit and escalate and accept or decline the order, what you end up with is a much more streamlined process of recruiting for that order and having 1 phlebotomist show up versus 6 phlebotomists show up. So real impact around both efficiency and productivity, and also the safety of being able to make sure that there is appropriate time to order collection metrics. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is very near and dear to many hospitals that we interact with, and that's PayMed requests. For specialty hospitals and non-specialty hospitals, the PayMed request workflow is one that directly impacts patient satisfaction scores, because if the patient's paying, we want to make sure that the PayMed is delivered in a timely manner. So what we see today is this process of having the PayMed be requested from the nurse call system or the call light system, and having a manual way of unit clerks to route that to the assigned RN, and having the RN actually go back to the nurse's station, get that PayMed request, and then actually address it. What we want to be able to do is eliminate, again, all of that manual process and instead be able to route that message to a mobile application, and with the right assignment, route that appropriately to the right nurse, and allow the nurse to have a mechanism to accept or decline so escalation happens, or even call back directly into the room. So now that feedback loop of patient initiating the request and nurse actually addressing the request is cut down in time so that the nurse can meet what the patient is asking for immediately. So like I said, I'm sure that with the folks on the phone, there's a multitude of other types of combinations and variations of workflows that your hospital is trying to meet and workflow demands that you're trying to make more efficient and impact. But really, when we look at the overarching, again, the goals of safety, quality, and efficiency, what we see as a theme that enables the better safety, better quality, and greater efficiency in all these workflows is the concept of providing the right information at the right time to the right clinician. So while in the first case, we have the alert coming through the telemetry system, what we also need to have is some indication of the patient that the telemetry alert is for, and some way to jump into that information for the patient to see additional data so that the nurse can make a next step call. In the second case, being able to see the type of care team member is assigned for that patient once you're in that context. So if you happen to have a question that you need to ask the CNA or the nurse or the phlebotomist or the provider, you'd be able to very quickly navigate to who you should be talking to. In the last instance of receiving a text message with the patient's request in the body of the text message, we also want to be able to know who the patient is, where the patient is, and what the patient's status is. So in those three scenarios, the overarching theme that carries throughout is really this idea of providing context. Context about the patient, context about the alert, context about the patient's care team, and context about the next step in care. And only when you have that context would you only be able to truly impact the outcomes of communications technologies and have those result in tangible metrics. So whether it's reducing number of devices carried, or streamlining team-based assignment, or 15% decrease in stat lab time when order gets processed, or a direct impact to patient satisfaction scores, these are all metrics that our hospitals and the hospitals that we've interacted with have been able to report because they have that ability to include the context with their communications workflow. The third item and the third bucket that we typically consider as we're approaching the engagement of designing a communication solution is really looking at the technical feasibility. Now, your hospital has probably already invested a ton of dollars and a ton of energy and effort into designing the highest security for your network, the best Wi-Fi connectivity, the best approach to managing users. But as you introduce additional information technology into that environment, you need to make sure that it actually interoperates with what you have in place today. So what we want to be looking at are three things. One is security, two is the interoperability, and three is the reliability and manageability, because that truly impacts adoption at the end of the day. So the first is security. And here at PatientSafe, security is near and dear to our heart. It's something that we stress a ton around because of all the information that we are sending and receiving, whether it's on our clinical workflow side or our communication side. So we really take that standard of security and apply it everywhere in our application, whether it's administrative safeguards, physical safeguards, or technical safeguards. So starting with administrative, what we want to be able to do and what you would want to be able to do is invest in a technology that meets your authentication needs, your privacy needs, your security needs, your administrative needs. So even your password for your users accessing your technology requires 12 characters, 2 symbols, a capital, and the name of their firstborn child. The system that you invest in should be able to accommodate for that. So this way, you don't have to be at the cusp of having to change your own standards of safety and security to be able to accommodate the technology that you bring in. The second piece is physical safeguards. We see a lot of times where hospitals are trying to push for a secured messaging solution or a communications tool to physicians or providers running it on their own device. And we see a lot of resistance around that because what the hospital needs them to sign off on is that if they lose their device or misplace their device or their device is stolen, they need to have the right to be able to remote wipe that entire device. So the best way to really protect against physical safeguards is to not have that information on the technology itself, not have that on the physical device itself, so that you're fully protected against the loss and theft of that device. So if you don't have any information, then you don't really need to have the ability to remote wipe. And the last piece is technical safeguards. So you'd want to be able to have a system that works with your network activities inside and outside the hospital. When you open up the system for external users and external use, you're not actually opening up a gap and risk for all of your EPHI. The second piece is interoperability. And we talked about this a lot before as well. And in designing the system, vendors need to be able to think in the framework of being interoperable with other systems. So whether that's a telephony system or your wireless infrastructure or alerting and middleware systems or assignment systems, or ultimately now or in the future, your EMR systems, with this amount of data, and there's really no information unless you actually have interoperability. So it's only when you unify all of the data information and deliver it on one platform would you be able to extract the information from that data and harmonize it into next steps in care for your clinicians. So what you want to be looking for is a vendor and a solution that can plug and play with all the existing investments you have in place, so that when you do roll out the application, it's not a siloed island of a technology, and it's more of a solution that fits on your IT roadmap. And the last piece under technical feasibility is really the reliability and manageability of the system. And I'm sure a lot of the folks on the webinar today have struggled with things like user management or mobile device management or system uptime. And these are really all the standards that we measure enterprise systems up against. What I don't want to be able to do as an IT professional is manage my users in 16 different systems. I want to be able to unify that management in one system, whether it's LDAP or Active Directory integration, so that when clinicians are entering or exiting the organization, you're not having to make sure to check off the systems list to remove or add them. The second piece is mobile device management. And a lot of our customers have noticed a transition from deploying single-use devices and onto deploying smart devices. And let's be honest, right? The point of investing in a smart tool is to be able to do more with that tool versus bringing back the application and the technology tool belt. So if we do want to do more with the device, the smart device that we've put in the nurse's hands, how do we make sure that the management of those devices, the management of those applications don't become a headache of a manual process? Having a true mobile device management technology in place and a strategy in place removes that need for manual update processes, removes the need to individually manage the security settings, and allows you to really streamline updates and pushes of new applications to the end users. And the last piece is system uptime. Our users, whether they're clinicians or ancillary staff, still expect the same degree of reliability that they had in their legacy products. Even if you're putting a much more feature-rich, functionality-rich technology into their hands, they expect the application to actually reliably make a voice call. They expect the application to reliably receive a text message no matter where they are. And when we come to alert integration and delivering critical alerts, they expect that alert to end up on the application in real time. So what we want to make sure of is, despite the feature richness and the functionality richness of the technology we put in the clinician's hands, the reliability and the strategy around failover and upgrades need to absolutely be solid and designed well. Because when all other systems are down, the communications tool is even more critical. So on this note of technical feasibility, we actually have an extensive list of questions that we typically ask ourselves when we're designing features into our application and that customers have asked us. So if anyone on the webinar today is interested in getting a hold of some of the questions that you may want to ask around technology feasibility, please let us know. And we are more than happy to jump on a call with you and discuss further around what kind of metrics and what kind of reliability standards should you be asking for in a vendor, in a communication solution that you're looking for. The last of the four things that I wanted to talk about today, before I hand this back to Steve, is this notion of end user feedback. We get a lot of instances where we walk into a hospital and there's a vendor fair that they're holding for the next 2 days. And what that vendor fair typically consists of is a group of nurses or a group of phlebotomists or a group of providers walking around to different booths, quote unquote, feeling out or testing out the technology. A lot of times these vendor fairs consist of multiple vendors, but in reality, that's only good for collecting the initial feedback around how to identify 1 to 2 vendors to really dig deep and assess. Once you've gotten down to the 1 to 2 vendors, it's really a matter of collecting real end user feedback. So request a small size pilot or request a small size trial and identify the key clinician types to be using the communications tool that you're deploying. And in that process, make sure that the pilot is simulating the real clinical workflows that you hope to impact. Because only in this scenario have we seen a real test and accountability around the ability for that technology to meet the user's needs. In this process as well, you'll be able to see the integration into the systems that you expect to connect to. And after a 30 to 45-day trial period, the output of the experience really helps the hospital decide on the solution that makes sense. Because what you'll end up getting is real end user feedback around the intuitiveness, the willingness to adopt the application, and how the system will really impact their clinical workflows and whether or not it's intuitive to those workflows. Of course, you'd also want to be able to track how it stands up to things like wireless roaming, optimization, and voice quality, and have a lot of lessons learned. And those lessons learned are probably around the effectiveness of deployment methods, identifying key evangelists internal to your organization to really get the other folks, whether they're nurses or phlebotomists or providers, excited about this new application and the new solution that you're putting into place. So that when it comes to time to roll out house-wide, the process is much more painless and you have as few surprises as possible. So now I'm going to hand it over to Steve to wrap up, but those were really the 4 buckets that we've seen be very successful for hospitals as they're assessing different types of tools. And sometimes it might not be just a communications tool, and it could be other types of clinical workflow tools and mobility tools, but really having those 4 areas as driving streams of assessments and gathering information and putting your vendor in the hot seat and asking all of the hard questions for them to answer will help you identify a true solution that meets your clinician's needs versus putting yet another Band-Aid on what their bottlenecks are. Steve?
Thanks, Grace. A couple things. One is we want to share what our external partners are in our ecosystem. We've done just a tremendous amount of building numbers of integrations over the years, be it EMR vendors, nurse call systems, alerting vendors, working with the middleware companies, obviously the telephony systems and device arrays out there. So we have a tremendous amount of experience. We're agnostic, we're open, and we're looking to provide you information about our learnings as well. So feel free to ask us about that. We'd be happy to speak with you about any of these integrations and partner technologies. On the other side, I want to really focus on us together as partners. Our success is really dependent on your success with our solution. And from that perspective, we are partners and we're unified on the same mission. And using that word unified again, because I think it's important. We are here to deliver high quality patient-centered care, and we believe that's your mission as well. So we want to do that. That's really our goals. Just want to tell you a little bit about that. I mean, Grace, I think, did a good job talking about how we may go about that with you through these 4 buckets that she talked about. But we do first start talking about understanding and identifying your goals, understanding your current workflows, your current technologies, and what your key success factors are. And then we want to work with you and partner with you to deliver continuous quality improvements towards meeting your goals and exceeding them. And that's really what we want to partner with you on, is getting to those unified and shared goals again. We create a technology platform that's extensible, it's integrated, as shown by this list of partners here today. It's open, really. It's meant to be a platform that can deliver the immediate needs of secure texting, voice, alerting, as you pointed out in the survey, but doing it in a unique way with having clinical context, patient-centered communications, and identifying workflows that solve problems and meet those challenges. And we built the platform in a way to address the current needs, but also the future needs, be it additional integrations or additional workflows that you want to look at us collaborating with you to solve. Might be critical lab value alerts, It might be a nurse call system. How do I find which patient, which care provider is assigned to my patient? These are all things we can partner with you on and deliver, and have delivered. I think lastly, I want to talk a little bit about how we're empathetic to the demands and pressures of the healthcare industry and what the workers face. We've purposefully built a solution that is intuitive and fits into workflows, but also helps comply with the policies and practices that you set in place for your care providers to deliver high quality care, but do it efficiently. Think about the patient experience. Think about the clinician experience as well. Happy clinicians will deliver probably better care. So we look at it as really we're helping you provide better service through technology. But the technology doesn't necessarily need to be front and center. It's the care delivery that's front and center and trying to address the goals you have. So, with that, we encourage you to reach out to us, ask us questions, invite us in for discussion around your goals. Ask questions on this webinar right now, and we can have a bit of discussion around how we can help you achieve higher quality care, improve your patient experience, and enhance your financial performance. We do that together in a unified fashion. That's how we partner. With that, I'm going to pass this back to Alex. Alex Condurzo, I think we'll open this up to the floor for questions. Alex?
All right, great. We've had a lot of good questions come in, and please feel free to continue to enter those questions into the questions pane as we begin our discussion here. I'd also like to just thank Grace and Steve for being here, and this informative presentation has been a lot of good information presented. So I guess we'll jump right into questions now. And we had a couple questions around middleware and why it's needed and what is recommended.
So we typically recommend middleware to be deployed when the hospital is trying to unify across multiple types of alerts or multiple alert systems. Now, if your hospital is trying to only route one alert or one alert system to an endpoint device, then we don't necessarily need the middleware in place. But really, when we start to look at routing multiple systems or routing multiple types of alerts, a middleware system can really help optimize that workflow, optimize the logic that you want to apply, so that in terms of escalation patterns and assignment patterns and delivery of those alerts can be all managed in one location. And on top of that, the actual tracking and auditing of alert information and the life cycle of that alert and reportability can also be streamlined as well with middleware.
Great, thank you, Grace. All right, we had a couple of questions around iOS versus Android and what you're seeing in the hospital environment today, and if there's any recommendations to take on that approach.
Sure. So we typically look at this from two angles. One is the shared device model that your hospital would want to provide to folks inside the hospital four walls. So that would be your nursing or phlebotomy team, your respiratory therapists, etc. And the other bucket is really folks that are outside the hospital. So your providers that may not be in the hospital 24/7 or any other types of clinicians that need this on their personal device. So on the latter, it's pretty straightforward. You'd want to be able to invest in a solution that can accommodate any type of platform, either iOS or Android. On the former, then it really comes down to the idea of whether your objective is to unify across your enterprise a specific type of platform, or if you're looking for higher customization on one platform versus the other. But really, in terms of the feature and functionality, you'd want to be able to give yourself the flexibility in a vendor that supports both, whether it's internal on shared device deployment applications or external to personal device usage.
Very insightful, thank you. And another question around alarm management. Will this use a true alarm management system, or will all messages and alerts, etc., receive the same priority?
So it definitely will be able to have the logic and customization around the type of alert, the priority of the alert. This way, so that when you get a new order alert, it doesn't sound the same as when you get a nurse call alert, and a high priority alert asking for pain from a patient in your nurse call doesn't sound the same as a low priority alert for water or blanket, etc. So we definitely have the ability, and the vendor that you select should definitely have the ability to reflect based on alert type, to reflect based on alert system, and to be able to reflect based on alert priority. And the representation of those alerts should be delivered differently based on their sensory indicator, like vibrate, no vibrate, their visual indicator, like a pop-up window versus just a batch count increase, and auditory indicators, so a very loud ping versus an auditory tone. And those are all things that need to be able to be customized based on what comes through. Otherwise, what we'll see is an increase in alert fatigue, because now the clinician isn't able to distinguish whether or not they need to look at the application and the alert immediately, or if they can wait until they exit the current patient's room to resolve a low priority alert need.
I just want to add one other comment to this one, which is a good response, Grace, but the assignment can really route alert to different types of care providers as well. So if it's a bathroom request, that may be able to be routed to the CNA first, for example, versus the nurse, to help reduce the fatigue, but also provide the right context for the right caregiver for the right task. And I think with that, plus the flexibility of alert types and sounds and notifications, we can really provide a solution that helps route the right information to the right caregiver at the right time.
Great, thank you, Steve and Grace. Another question, how does infection control come into play with regard to utilizing personal cell phones in patient rooms and then continually taking them home for use?
Yeah, so it's a good question. On the shared device model, which is typically what we see with the nurses, the types of cleansers that are used, the Sani wipes, the Cavicide, Sani wipe with bleach, these devices, if you're using the wipes, are durable to many of those chemicals. So I think we have a pretty good solution there. It's covered with the typical chemicals and disinfectants that are used. We don't typically recommend those shared devices be taken home, hospital property. We are secured against that in case it does. As Grace mentioned, that data resides on our central server, and so we can still have a protected system. But typically those are the hospital devices. Now the physicians, they have their own personal devices. They can use the approved cleaning and disinfectant agents as well. We've seen some customers look at some UV technologies out there. We're happy to talk to you about the supported technologies for and disinfectants for cleaning the devices.
Great, thank you, Steve. Sorting through the next questions here. Someone's asking, they work in hospital IT and they are considering smartphones for their facility and wondering who else is involved in, or have you seen involved in these types of decisions?
That's an awesome question. What we've seen be successful in the process of these decisions is involving some of the clinician stakeholders, primarily one to identify what pains and what bottlenecks and communications they're facing today, and really understanding what types of outcomes and workflows we're trying to impact at a high level. The other is to also understand what their technology needs are today and in the future, so that we're not investing in a communications tool that won't be able to grow with both the IT roadmap and the clinician and the clinical group roadmap. So involving folks like the CNO or CNIO, or even the directors of nursing in your facility, has proven to be a much more successful process for the hospitals that we engage with.
All right, thank you, Grace. I think we've addressed most of the questions asked so far. Are there any other questions in the audience? We'll give everyone just a second to see if we've addressed all of the questions. And I wanted to thank everyone for joining us this morning and let you know that we are recording today's session and will make it available after the session if you'd like to share it or review any of the information shared today. So thanks again, Grace and Steve, for your time this morning, and everyone else for sharing your time this morning with us. And we will conclude today's session.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, everybody.